Thank you. What a flattering introduction that was. I left out a few things out of my CV there, but of course manifest modesty precludes me elaborating in detail. I don't know whether a lot of you know, but I'm a political animal. I am the right of Genghis Khan. I don't know whether that might be a bit brutal and a bit truculent for a lot of you in this room, but I have a clear vision for the country, and I've listened very intently to both Mr. Drury. One of my pet hates, of course, is preferences. And then I listen intently to fiscal policy, which is one of the few, Professor, where are you, Sinclair? Which I've enjoyed immensely. It was a wonderful Shakespearean sonnet over 14 lines and a précis that I actually understood on fiscal policy. And why this hasn't been incorporated for some time, I've got no idea. Now, I pay my fair share of tax, and I'm very proud to pay it because I'm a very high achiever, and I make no qualms about that. But may I just digress with your permission for a moment? Fiscal policy is imperative. We talk about the structure and the topography of the landscape of which we live, which we all know has changed dramatically over the years. At a time where we multiplied our possessions and reduced our values. We've got bigger homes, we've got smaller families. We build broader freeways, we've got narrower views. We build more computers to download more information, yet we communicate less and less. We have difficulty crossing the street to talk to a neighbour. And I look at this microcosm of wealth and influence and this convocation of scholastic talent that's prevalent in this room. Apart from that Christian group, what's that Christian group? I'll get to you a little bit later on, mate. But it's amazing how much in the short space of 2 decades. And you know, you look at the wisdom that's prevalent in this room. Who would have thought that as we speak that the best golfer in the world would be black? The best rap dancer would be white. The Swiss would have held the America's Cup. The French would accuse the Americans of being arrogant. And the Germans would refuse to go to war. But see, that's all happened in the short space of 2 decades. Now, you may laugh, but it has. That is fact. Without a doubt, you can't argue. Well, let me just digress another, often a tangent if I may. I've just celebrated my 20th wedding anniversary. Thank you for the animated response. But I'll be implicitly candid with you. I've had a couple of cracks at reaching that lofty landmark. In fact, I ran into my first wife last week and I forgot her name. Then I remembered it was plaintiff. But anyhow, but some of you would understand, you're really tempting fate when you ask your partner of 2 decades, how would you like to celebrate 20 years of sheer bliss? Now, without being disparaging to a lot of you in this room, very few of you will ever get the opportunity of trekking the rarefied orbit that I trek in. Most of you are going to be hovering around base camp and that's where you're going to be staying all your lives. So there's nothing wrong with that. But you'll know with these dark fiscal clouds that if we're led to believe as the way they disseminate information in this country, that they're really hanging around. Well, you're really tempting fate when you ask your partner how would you like to celebrate, because it'll really test your resource, or the depth of resource. But in my case, I'm very lucky. I've got a very frugal partner. And when I posed the question, she said, you know what, Sam? I'd like to go back where it all started 20 years ago. So I picked up the phone and I booked a suite at the Hilton Hotel. And we had a wonderful candlelit dinner. Then we adjourned back to our suite that night. Now, most of you in this room will know what a superstar I've been in the fields of battle of this wonderful nation. But what a lot of you don't know is just how anatomically gifted I am to be able to perform equally as adequately late at night. And despite the fact that my partner put on a few extra kilos over a 20-year period, and the fact that I burnt my arse in the ceiling light, I still performed fairly admirably. And in the morning, as I did 20 years earlier, I ordered breakfast, sat in the balcony and proceeded to digest a liberal splash of bacon and eggs. When at that precise moment in time, she intervened and said, Sam. And I said, what? She said, you obviously having a senior's moment. And I said, why is that? She said, well, if you recall 20 years ago, we sat in this very balcony, but we sat here totally unclad. I looked at her fair and square in the eye and I said, well, if you're game enough, so am I. So we both disrobed. And we sat there in the nude, proceeded to have our breakfast. 5 minutes had elapsed, and she said, Sam. And I said, what? She said, I just want to let you know that my nipples are as warm for you now as they were 20 years ago. So I cogitated, or just pondered for a moment, and I said, so they ought to be. I said, one's in your porridge and the other's in your coffee. So what's the relevance of all that about a political party? Well, I'm going to tell you. I may not be a full book as Sinclair is on fiscal policy, and Mr. Drury is on his insidious, surreptitious formation of a political party, with the greatest degree of respect, I might add. Joe Belkey Peterson and Jerry Manders went out the back door a long time ago. You know, we're not going to all of a sudden turn a freeway through a bottle shop. I think you all know what I'm alluding to. But I will tell you how you can win. The lamb industry, 7 years ago, some of you may understand the rural sector, were culling our sheep and putting them in the ground for $1 a head.
Yep, that's right.
You could go to a butcher shop and he'd give you a box of lamb shanks for 50 cents to give to your dog. My wife went to Brand Central and bought 6 lamb shanks the other day and paid $43.95 for them. And then rang me up and told me to stick my head up my arse. You may laugh. Now here lies the great paradox. Because I'm going to tell you one thing. Now, Mr. Drury, this country is primed. And Sinclair touched on it briefly. He could have probably extrapolated a little bit more. The time of spin, platitudes, slogans, deviousness, deception and guile are rooted.
Yep.
Dispense with it. Because the public out there, the constituency, are ready for someone to stand up and say it as it is. And despite the fact that what I do and peddle on TV, the lamb industry is a wonderful product. We have got a fantastic product. But one of the key facts in the manner in which it's presented, in a very irreverent, satirical, Australian manner. Thank God we had the vision a couple of years ago, or 18 months ago, to get rid of that obsequious, sycophantic Sybarite who ran our country, who we overdosed on tolerance and immersed ourselves in political correctness, which has sent us back 100 years. The only thing we've done smart in this country was releasing David Hicks from Guantanamo Bay. And then what we do, we send him to Adelaide as though the poor bastard had something else. But I'm telling you, I travel the length and width of this country. Now, people don't gravitate, I don't gain traction because I'm Sam Kekovich, but they do believe in what I say. Now, Sam Kekovich, as you know, the derivative of the surname Kekovich is not Anglo-Saxon. It's got a European connotation that lends itself to a tinge of slander, and I grew up in this wonderful country in the 50s. I was born in Manjot, Western Australia. A very proud Australian, came with parents from war-torn Europe. Didn't come here off their own volition, were forced migrants because they opposed communism and Hitlerism. But when they got here, let me tell you the difference between the country of Australia then and the nation we are now. When they got here, we had distinct leadership. They came here and they were shown a way to go. We went to Bonegilla, but we also were sponsored. We grew tobacco. And my father assimilated, became a leader of the community, learnt the language, was one of the Dagos and the Wogs of the time that hang over a drip tray and said, "It's your shout, mate," and became a part of Australian folklore. But they accepted and they rolled up their sleeves and became a part of the truly new Australia because they were committed to it. It's cosmopolitan. I argue with my good friend Simon Crean, who we're ideologically poles apart, but we're great mates, through another common fabric that we share at the North Melbourne Football Club, who was the #1 ticket holder, and a great man, I might add. Got a great vision, but like all those soft-cock you know, got that wonderful terminology in the lexicon called inclusion, and, you know, let's hug and all that bullshit. Anyhow, but, you know, what we've allowed to fester under the guise of multiculturalism is these acrimonious pockets of dissent that don't assimilate, they don't learn our language, because we have allowed